Probably shouldn't do that. Set off the smoke alarms. What's up, everybody? Yeah. My back, my neck are hurting, so yeah, I'm using this pillow. That's right. I'm going to do this comfortably. There's been a lot of discussion recently about LSU losing recruits, losing top guys. This has been something going back to the Orgeron era. Um, 5-star Louisiana talents leaving the state and going to Texas A&M, going to, Alabama, of course, and now we're losing 2 5-star Louisiana pillars of the 2023 class to the Texas Longhorns. I don't like it. I hate that. I can't stand seeing Louisiana guys leave. But let me explain to you why I feel like there should be some nuance in this discussion. It isn't just Kelly and staff just failing horribly. It isn't a case of just LSU completely just falling flat and missing these guys. It's a case of how much time have they really had to establish a relationship? How much time have Brian Kelly and his staff really been able to recruit Louisiana as well as they could? I understand everyone saying, well, they're getting this guy from this state and they're getting this guy from that state. How come they can't recruit Louisiana like they are recruiting, Missouri, with bringing in the DeSmet guys? How they're recruiting, Dalen Austin coming out of SoCal, Long Beach. But it's like, they've been in Louisiana for 6 months. How come they can't get Tackett Curtis? How come they can't get this guy? Let me just be straightforward with you. It's about establishing relationships in recruiting. How long you've been talking to them. It's very rare that you see a program just jump on a player in the last 2-3 months of their, process and just earn a recruitment without, a large sum of money being on the table or a guaranteed starting job, something huge like that. You see it very, very rarely unless you're Texas A&M the last few years where you're just grabbing guys nonstop because you are throwing around that type of money. People are saying this is about LSU losing the NIL battle. I want to hear your opinions on that because I'm going to be sharing mine. I've got some very, very intense opinions on NIL and LSU and recruiting and what they are doing and what they are not doing. But yeah, come on in, ask your questions. I've been talking to a lot of recruits. We just put out a big piece for the subscribers. It was free overnight. Now it's just for subscribers. LSU's next 2023 commits, the first off the board in July. Who will it be? I think starting July 1st, you're going to see a big defensive lineman join LSU and then another following right on his heels. And I think Jamar Cain's going to make a splash and kind of turn that narrative around. But we'll get into that. Let me post this real quick. Yep. It's been a wild few days where you got Arch Manning, committing to Texas. A lot of people were saying Texas were picking up steam, but then you kept hearing, the biggest of the biggest recruiting people who suddenly say they aren't surprised by this choice by Arch. Before, they were saying there's no way he's not going to go to an SEC program because of his history. He's going to go to an SEC program, yada, yada, yada. Well, you were wrong on that. And I always felt like Texas, could throw around the same type of techie money that A&M is doing. If A&M is throwing around that money, I get they have the oil and the military contracts and all that stuff. That's insane. That's going to boost that money up big time. But when you also have basically the same resources with a very cash-rich alumni from the University of Texas in a place like Austin where it's just, There's a lot of music scenes going on in Austin. There's a lot of film industry scenes going on in Austin. There's a lot of different scenes going on in Austin. It's pretty much the perfect college town for these kids too. So they're able to sell that as well. But hey, Reuben Owens should have been a player who would have gone to Texas. He went to Louisville of all schools. So let's don't act like Texas is suddenly dominating and the greatest, recruiting class of all time. Okay. They got Arch Manning, which big deal, huge. Maybe more to do with Steve Sarkisian than anything. And the fact that they have that plan where Quinn Ewers will start this next year and then be gone for Arch to take the reins there. But back to LSU, are LSU really losing recruits big time? Is LSU really getting their asses kicked on the recruiting trail? I mean, I think yes and no. I think LSU, as I said before, I said this on the Mark Rogers show appearance when Arch had just committed minutes before. I said that LSU, this class, are going to be banking on what they know and what they trust, which is, long established relationships with players who may or may not be from Louisiana, mostly from national, reaches of the country. That hurts because you want to get as many top Louisiana talents as possible. Seeing guys like Tackett Curtis leave the state, seeing guys like D. Will leave the state, you don't want to see it. You would hope that Arch Manning could have been that quarterback that, for LSU to really start the Manning legacy. But, as far back as 2020, there was talk that there was no way Arch would be headed to LSU. I always felt like there was no vibes or interest from Arch toward LSU. D Will, that's a kid that's harder to really take leaving the state. 127 tackles last year. Absolute freight train of hate pain, an absolute freak unleashed here, D Will. Westgate, you know, really rising high, winning a state title last year with him and guys like Danny Lewis, of course, who another topic of this same discussion. It's hard to take someone like D Will leaving this state when you really need safety to be big coming into 2023 next year. You really need to replace Jay Ward. Joe Fouché is on in his last transfer. As a transfer, this is his last year of eligibility as well. And there's some uncertainty, some lack of depth, some guys you don't know if you can trust there as well. So safety is a big concern going into 2023. But the biggest concerns for this class are receiver, DB, especially corner, and linebacker. You always want to get linebackers coming in. Mike Jones Jr. is going to be leaving the NFL after this year, like 99.9%. And you always want to get a quarterback too. But now we're also seeing, LSU had so many options at quarterback. We had Dante Moore, Jaden Rashada. We had Reese Mooney. We had all these random guys, Ricky Collins, and now they're really making their choices. Ricky Collins firmed to Purdue as he confirmed to Jacques Doucet, one of the best in the business, Jacques Doucet. And then you got, of course, Eli Holstein, another great Louisiana guy, going to Alabama. Arch Manning going to Texas. Dante Moore looking like he is edging closer and closer to being another, top quarterback at Oregon. And Dante Moore seemed to be the 2023 quarterback LSU had the best chances of signing. That's not what you want to hear. You don't want to hear that LSU are losing these options at quarterback either. But at the same time, and I've said this before too, I said this on my appearance during that Arch Manning live special on the Mark Rogers show on his channel on YouTube. LSU might run out of quarterback options in 2023. Okay. And it might not be the worst thing in the world because we've got Walker Howard, we've got Garrett Nussmeier, two young quarterbacks right there. Do we really need a 2023 quarterback? You could argue we do. Jaden Daniels could transfer somewhere else after this year if he doesn't start. Uh, he has 1 year remaining of eligibility after this season. Miles Brennan is done after this year. Finally, just done. The Chris Wenke of LSU will have no more years of eligibility, and maybe unless he has another injury right now, he could perhaps I think get another medical red shirt. I'm really not sure about that. He's had so many. This will be his sixth season on campus. Oh, I made Rivers lash out at me. Did I wake you up, buddy? But NIL, where does that factor in? Are LSU losing the NIL race? Therefore, we're going to be losing these top players from Louisiana. I don't think so because here's the thing: when you talk about NIL and someone like Tackett Curtis, Tackett Curtis didn't give a damn about NIL. He just wanted to be recruited hard. He wanted to be shown development, shown that he had a place somewhere. And LSU royally screwed that recruitment up a year ago with Coach Ed Orgeron and Blake Baker just royally screwing the pooch there long before Kelly even came to campus. And that's the thing that you're going to see is LSU are also going to lose guys because of just the simple transition process here from Ed Orgeron to Brian Kelly. Relationships established with Ed Orgeron gone, severed. Maybe they're entertaining Kelly, maybe they're not. They're kind of like, oh, and then they're gone somewhere else. Because let's face it, Coach O, Brian Kelly, two very different coaches, two very different recruiting styles. It's going to be interesting to see how Kelly is able to recruit Louisiana and how much NIL does play a part in it. Because when you're talking about players like Danny Lewis, NIL was everything. Alabama threw him $31,000. He was gone. He didn't care if he played it down there. LSU were actually telling him, Danny, you actually might start for us. And that's why we're dancing all crazy because you might be my pinnacle tight end next year. Danny Lewis was not ready for that. Danny Lewis was not ready for that to be right behind Cole Taylor and Jack Mashburn as the next tight end in waiting. He was not. Um, I think Jordy Collada also said that too, and that's true. Danny Lewis, yeah, but the figure was off, but yeah, Danny Lewis was definitely afraid of actually starting for LSU immediately. But D Will, I can't say that NIL played everything here. NIL played a big part, but really this is about him wanting to go where he's actually guaranteed to play to start right out of the gate. Texas needed somebody like D. Will more than you can imagine. LSU, could afford to say, "Hey, well, we can't really guarantee you a spot and all this stuff." Texas had no problem doing that, and maybe that's what LSU needs to go back to doing is look at someone like Sage Ryan. We could have feasibly said, "Yeah, your freshman year, you're probably not going to start there. Your sophomore year, you're starting there as a safety, as our in a tandem with Jay Ward as one of our starting safeties." LSU didn't do that, and now look where Sage Ryan is. He's kind of playing at nickel. He's not. He really doesn't like playing there. He's willing to do whatever the team needs him to do and take a bullet for the team in 2022. But as a redshirt freshman, I don't expect him to do that for another season for LSU, and I expect him to remember that and be gone. So like, there's a hardball that LSU's current staff are playing with our current roster and future recruits from Louisiana that is they're rubbing people the wrong way, and I put that in the article too. As much as I've defended Kelly's relationship strategized recruiting push here, I understand that he's going to bank on guys that they've been talking to and know and can trust will stay committed throughout, won't just bail on them at the final stretch, which could leave this class in a bad spot. They want to sew this class up by July and August. In order to, can you see them doing that? Can you see them doing that? It's tough for me to see them sewing this class up by July and August, getting the fortified pieces of this class ready by July and August. That is tough to see us signing 8 or 9 guys in July. I don't think that's possible. I think you're going to see LSU get some momentum here big time. I've already mentioned it right off the top. If you go to our site, LSUODYSSEY.com, right there, there is a big recruiting article. LSU's next 2023 commits. And even though the title has some question marks at the end of it, really there are no question marks with the names within. We didn't really go deep as crazy as we could with every player in the cycle. We went with the guys who are going to commit in the next few weeks, who've made it known that they will commit. And that's what we wanted to focus on. And you've got big names in there. We predict Christian Gray, whether he's going to come to LSU. We predict Ashton Stamps coming out of nowhere, earning an offer out of Rummel during some really good camp performances. Tyree Adams at a St. Aug. Joshua Mickens, as we said at the top, he revealed to us last night that he will make his commitment on July 3rd, this coming Sunday. We posted that news, and I like to think we probably beat everybody in the recruiting world about that news with Joshua Mickens, because we cared and we actually asked him. They were off the ball on that one. 247 posting that news. Steve Wiltfong posting that news this morning, whereas we posted that last night. That's why you've got to join LSUODYSSEY.com. What we're doing. I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to plead for someone to subscribe to my site. I really don't care that much if you do or not. But if you don't, you're missing out on so many things that you'll find out a week or so later, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month. But there's stuff we broke on this site that we broke by weeks. Mike Jones Jr.'s transfer. Gloria Scott naming Coach Ed Orgeron in USA Today. One of our sources was participating in that USA Today story as someone speaking out, and we were able to get that tip from them. We cast a wide net. We're a one-man show here, but we cast a wide net, okay? And there is no door we cannot get through, and you just got to follow what we're doing here. At Lon Phillips on Twitter, LSUODYSSEY.com. We've got some explosive interviews. This weekend alone, we just had Jay Ward, Cardell Thomas, and Malik Neighbors, Jack Besh, and Malik's mom, Tanya, in some exclusive interviews and profiles, a video, full write-up with some interview quotes sprinkled in, full straight-up interview as well with Jay Ward. These are some of the first interviews Jay Ward and Cardell Thomas have ever given at LSU. This is the first time Cardell Thomas has even spoken out about his injury since it happened back in 2019. This is the first lengthy interview for Jay Ward. So when we say something, we're not just talking out of our ass. We're not just hearing something in the wind and then posting it. We go directly to the source. We're not going to post something that some football player, top elite football player, said to us without that being true, obviously. Right? No one's going to lie in front of the world. This person said this when the person can just post, no, I didn't, and pull your pants down and make you look like, I could say a few names recently who've kind of embarrassed themselves, but I won't. But back to recruiting and NIL. Okay. I feel like LSU are way too new to the NIL thing. Way too new to the NIL thing. There's a project that I'm even, I guess, a part of. It's so hard to know because the process is slowed down. It's curious to know where LSU are at with the NIL world, because it seems like there's just not an interest in the NIL. It seems like it's, well, if these players want money, we don't want them type of attitude. And I'm telling you, if that's the case, we're going to miss on a lot of guys. The rules are the rules. College football players are now able to be financed for their name, image, and likeness fairly. which should have been happening a long, long time ago. Okay. And so LSU need to catch up to this, or we're going to be steamrolled by Alabama, by Texas A&M every year, not just on the recruiting trail, okay, but on the football field. You and I both know the recruiting trail equals the results on the field. We don't want to see LSU going down in this downward spiral, because I'm telling you, look at our roster right now, okay? There's some really dangerous places on this roster. Brad Davis came in and was able to fix O-line. Okay, O-line could have fallen into this same trap. And it looks like we'll be able to pick up some local guys to kind of keep that momentum rolling. Defensive back is not the same. Defensive back scares the hell out of me. It's not because of Robert Steeples. I believe Robert Steeples may be one of the best coaches on our staff. But that doesn't matter if we have a gap here where we have to go back into the portal for a second straight season to get starters. I mean, you know how hard it is to get starting quality defensive backs in the transfer portal? You think we're not shelling out NIL funds for those guys? If you don't think that and you only think it's for recruits, you're out of your mind. LSU had to wager, do we want to spend that money on the 2022 class, or do we want to spend that money on proven guys in the transfer portal who we know can help us this season? That's what Kelly did. Okay, Kelly went with the 2022 transfer portal over the 2022 class. We already had our pinnacle, local guys. We lost out on some of the flashy skill position guys that you would have loved to get, Kendrick Law, Shaz Preston, but you know, we were able to bridge that gap. But when you look at some of the guys we brought in 2021 in that DB class, Demarius McGee was like, the biggest, and then LT Welch was basically it in 2022 outside of Jordan Allen. It's slim pickings, big time. 2023 is huge as far as DB. That's why I was glad to see us grab two safeties really quickly. Ryan Yates, who I think could be an absolute starter for LSU, high quality specimen all over the field. Really love what I see from Ryan Yates. Once again, plays in Texas where it's hard to gauge the competition and the rate of the competition there. But still, a do-it-all, absolute freight train athlete who I want to see at LSU, and I want to see what he can do. I think he could be a special player for LSU. Michael Doherty out of Grayson, Georgia. It's hard to say whether he is more hype than hope. What type of player is Michael Doherty? There's so many questions with MD. I know LSU fans really love to see that signing out of the gate with Kerry Cooks, but I still have a lot of questions. Dalen Austin, getting him cornerback out of Long Beach Poly was fantastic. A big splash type of recruit. But if we don't get Jordan Matthews out of Woodlawn, a proven guy we've been following for some time, if we can't get, we see D. Will leaving the state out of Westgate. There's some big questions about cornerback and DB going into 2023. I can't see us going back into the transfer portal and being able to get 6 corners and safeties from Arkansas, from all these top SECs, from Oklahoma State. We took some big time guys from some big time schools. I can't see us doing that again for a second straight off season to bridge that gap, to save us, to give us a DBU parachute. I think we absolutely have to have guys like LT Welch playing big time reps in 2022 to prepare himself for 2023. I think we have to see LSU throw out the bag big time for DBs this class. LSU need to throw the money around. I'm just going to say it right now. If we want to secure Shelton Sampson Jr., if we want to get Omarion Miller back in the fold, if we want to see LSU really finish this class strong as far as, Louisiana talents. We're not going to get them all, but if we can at least get some of the guys we really needed, Shelton Sampson Jr., Omarion Miller, we got to get both, in my opinion. I'd love to get both. If you had to pick one, who's your one? Omarion Miller, Shelton Sampson Jr. I think it's a no-brainer. Shelton Sampson. At the same time, Omarion Miller's a freak. Over 20 touchdowns last year. Absolute specimen. You don't want to see these guys going out of state because then they kill LSU later on down the road. Okay. You got to check out our LSU's next 2023 commits piece because we basically put it right out there. We've got a few offensive linemen, a few defensive linemen, a few corners. This is the thing. LSU are going to really fortify the trenches once again this cycle. They want to fortify the trenches with their guys in a way, which is fine. The 2022 offensive line is really, really, really deep. You love what you see from our offensive line, coming out of this offseason, not only with the transfer portal, but who we recruited and then the depth left over. There's innumerable depth. And there's going to be guys returning from this class, from this roster for next year. In a very talented, very, very talented 2022 freshman class. Bridge the gap there, keep the momentum rolling. But as far as DB, receiver, losing even defensive end, but I think we'll kind of be solving those problems as well. But we need to get 4 or 5 defensive linemen. We're going to be losing B.J. Ojolari, Ali Gay, Jaquelin Roy. That's just 3 that we know for sure. We just lost Sony Fanua to the transfer portal as well, but those 3 for sure. At receiver, you lose potentially the number 1 receiver in college football, Kayshon Boutte, to the NFL draft. He's for sure going to the draft next year. Dre Jenkins will also be going to the draft next year. So, and then you got a list of 2021 receivers who are all entering their money year. They're the cusp of going to the draft as well. LSU could be in dire straits when it comes to receiver and DB specifically if they don't get this right. I think defensive line will figure itself out this class. I think Jamar Cain's going to do great there. I think there's plentiful talent we can get, even though it's a very weak year for defensive line from Louisiana. Have you noticed that? Hardly any top defensive lineman out of the 2023 class coming from Louisiana. I may be forgetting a name, 1 or 2, but if you look at the group overall, I know I'm right on that. It's very weak this year at defensive line from this state. But we absolutely have to solidify cornerback, receiver, without a doubt. We can sleep on a quarterback for this this offseason, this cycle right here. I really don't feel like we absolutely have to get a 2023 quarterback, hell or high water. I really don't feel like that now that the options are you want to get the right guy each and every cycle so that if that's the dude to bridge the gap, you feel 100% comfortable with him starting for at least 1 season for you. Dante Moore, sure. And now we're down, but now he's probably going to Oregon, things like that, looking like Oregon is really on. Even though Dante Moore and LSU, there was some fireworks there, I'm telling you. It looked like Dante Moore could very well end up at LSU, and he still might. He still might. But from everyone I'm talking to, very close to the Moore family, Moore is real. I see Oregon and LSU, we're like this before that visit. Maybe give LSU a little bit of a lead, and then Oregon pulled ahead, just like that. So who does that leave us? At quarterback, Reese Mooney, and I feel like that would be a fantastic pick for LSU. Someone who loves LSU, diehard LSU fan. but it just seems like there hasn't been much of a push from Joe Sloan, even though he's still talking to him, still keeping in contact. Sloan, always a great recruiter, he's going to do that. But I wanted to see more of a push for Reese Mooney. We've got a very thick, full packed interview with Reese Mooney on our site as well. Definitely go check that out. Um, everything is optimized on the site. All you have to do is put in the search bar, or there's a list of categories. If the player fits that category or situation, you click on it and it's right there in the drop down bar. And also, when you look at an article like, say, LSU's next 2023 commits that we just posted, when there's a name highlighted in purple or a different color in bold than just the typical default black, that means that is a link that is leading to another article of ours, or sometimes a YouTube clip to kind of show the play we're talking about and describing, things like that. It's more interactive than and maybe we're just not doing a good enough job of highlighting that. But this goes a few different ways. Just to close with this, LSU are losing the battle in Louisiana in 2023, but I feel they already knew they would. That 2023's Louisiana class would be collateral damage from a transition, from cleaning up Orgeron's shit pile that took so long and took a lot of time and resources away from these guys. Uncle Jess Curtis, Coach Jess Curtis from Manny High, told me if Matt House had a few more months, who knows? And that's all it depends. That's all it matters is how much time are you willing to spend with that kid to establish that relationship with that kid. And then with NIL, how much money are you willing to spend? How important is that one player for you? I feel like when it comes to LSU and the NIL collectives, NIL world, one player isn't enough, isn't valuable enough for these collectives. I think had it been 2020,